Okay, here's our follow-up video on perimeter and area. This time around, we're looking for perimeter and area of composite figures. What's a composite figure? Please write this definition down in your notebooks. A composite figure. It's a figure made up of simple geometric shapes such as rectangles, triangles, trapezoids, and circles. Of course, you're not limited to just these four. Composite figures is basically a composite or where you have different parts put together of various geometric shapes. It could be, yes, it could be a whole slew of different things here. Um, you might want to pause the video here if you have not finished copying down this definition because I'm moving on to the next slide here. Okay, so here we go. Example one, find the perimeter of the area. You're given this composite figure here. Hopefully your eyes will be able to kind of see that it's made out of different rectangles. Here's a rectangle here. Here is another rectangle here, as you can see. And then lastly, there's another rectangle over here. Okay, so it's made up of like three different rectangles. Let's start with the perimeter though. The perimeter is, we're looking for the lengths of all of the sides. So the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to figure out how many sides make up this figure. And so you start from one side and you start with, let's be very systematic about this. Let's start with the furthest left side here. That's one, that's two, that's three, that's four. And so I want you to just kind of pause the video at this time and write down the number of sides that make up this figure here. Okay? Be right back. Okay, so were you able to figure out how many sides there are? Well, let me use a highlighter to show how many sides there are. We're starting from one end. Here's one, here's two, here's three, here's four, here's five, here is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Notice how there are 12 sides that make up this figure, okay? Hopefully you got 12. If you have not gotten 12, go back and rewind and see if you can count 12 sides here. Now, what we need to do is we need to add up the lengths of each of these sides. For example, the 4, the 2, the 3, and so forth. But as we go along, you'll notice that a couple sides don't have any dimensions on it. Like this length here doesn't have anything. And this length here doesn't have any dimensions. Why is that? Well, they did that on purpose because it's pretty obvious what those lengths are. Notice how in this particular example, this length is actually the same as that length underneath. Because if you kind of close this up, it makes a rectangle. And rectangles are composed of two sets of parallel lines. So if that length here is a 2, oops, this length here got to be a 2 as well. So I'm just going to write that in here. That's a 2 here. Okay. Next, same deal over here. This length here is actually part of this rectangle, and it should be the same as this length here because there are parallel lines. So that length here is obviously a 4, so I'm just going to write a little 4 there. Now we're ready to add up the sides, and so I can start from the 4, and I'm going to just start adding them here. Here's a 4 plus the 2 gives you a 6. 6 plus the 3 is a 9. 9 plus 4 is a 13. 13 plus 4 is a 17. 17 plus 6 is 23. 23 and added another 4 to it is 27. 29, 30, 34, 41, 44, 45, and 46. So I've got a total of 46. And you want to write down your units. Notice how there really isn't, it's not centimeters or inches, but if no unit is given, just use the word units. You've got 46 units total. You might want to double check your work, and I'm just going to kind of look at the 4s. I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see a lot of 4s, so that's 5 times 4 is 20. This makes it 27. Plus a 3 makes it 30. 30, and here's a 35, 40, and with the 6, 46. So I double checked my work, it is 46 units. So I got myself the perimeter here. It's 46 units. 46 units. Now we're going to be looking for the area. Here's the same figure. The first step in figuring out the area is to break it apart into the basic geometric shapes. And so as I've mentioned before, have you noticed how we've got a rectangle here, right? Here's a rectangle there, and here's another rectangle here. Okay? So this is where I want to break apart this composite figure. So I'm just going to basically draw a line that goes straight down. And it looks a little messy here. Let's use this here. Okay? And then here is where I'm going to be breaking down so I have three basic rectangles as you notice. And what is my area for a rectangle? It is base times height. So let's just call this so this number one here, it would be area equals to base times height. Here's my base. That base was a 2. So it would be 2 times my height. Now, let me ask you this here. Is my height a 4 or is my height a 3? How could it be? Why is there two different numbers? Pause the video and think about this. Why is it that, which number do I use? Do I use the 4 or the 3? Okay? Well, the 3 is really this length right over here. It's not the full length. It only goes up to this point here. And so the 4 is really the height of this rectangle. So you want to use the 4. So it's going to be 2 times 4, which makes it 8 units squared. Okay, so that's my area for the first composite figure. The second composite figure is here. And let me start by writing out the formula here. It's always a good habit to get into writing out the formula. Base times height. What is my base over here? Well, my base is the 7. That's over here. So my base would be a 7. I'll write a 7 first. What is my height? My height is, again, is it the 3 or is it the 4? Okay, pause the video and think about what the height is. Is it 3 or a 4? Okay, well, it is a 4 because the length of the side starts from the bottom, it goes all the way to the top here to complete this rectangle. This 3, once again, it only goes up to here. And so, in order for you to go all the way to the top, it really is a 4. And so, I'm going to put a little 4 here. And that makes it 28 unit squared. Okay? So, I've got my second area here. Lastly, the third, number 3. A equals to base times height. What could that be? Once again, take a look. We're looking for the base, which is this whole line here. It can't be a 3 because the 3 is only for this partial side. You're going to be looking at the one on the top. That's a 6. So the base is really a 6. Let me write that in, 6. And the height is the 4 that we have here, 4. Okay? So 6 times 4. That gives you 24 units squared. Now, what do I do with all of these three different areas? Well, if the area of this is 8 units, if the area of the second one is 28, if the area of the third is 24, and I want to know the total area of this, well, you need to add up all three, obviously. And so, take the 8, take the 28, take the 24, add them up. Notice how they're all units. Squared, unit, squared, unit, squared. That's going to follow through. Unit squared. That's 16, 20, 60. So my total final answer, the area is 60 units squared. Okay? All right, let's move on to the next problem here. Example number 2 is asking us to find, once again, the perimeter and the area. How do I go about doing this? I want you to count up the number of sides first. How many sides are there? Okay, pause the video and count it right now, and then come on back afterwards. Okay, what's the number of sides? Well, let's start from the furthest to the left side here. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I counted 12 sides. Okay, there are a total of 12 sides. Now I need to know the dimensions. What could be the dimension of this side here? Oh boy, they didn't give it to us. They did not give us the length of this side either. So how do I figure that out? Or this side here. So what I should do is I should highlight the sides that they did not give us in green. Here's one, here's another, here's another. And so how do I figure out what the lengths are of these? Well, let's start with the easier one here. This length here is the same as that length there, so that's a 5. Okay, so here's a 5. This length here, if you look very carefully, is actually the combination of this length, and that length. So that's actually a total of 8. So this is actually 8 here. 8. Okay? And lastly, the length of this length here is actually a combination of this length, that's a 3, with this length, that's another 3, and this length. So that's a 6, 7, 8. That's a total of 8. Okay? So I've got the dimensions of all of the sides. Now it's a matter of just adding them up. And so I'll start by saying 8 plus a 2 is a 10. That's 15, 18. That's a 23, 26, 29, 34, 37, 42, 44, and 52. You might want to check your math. You know that I make mistakes at times. But I counted 52 units as my perimeter. That's my perimeter. Okay? 52 units. Moving on to the area. What I want to do first of all is to break it apart into geometric shapes. And let's start with this one here. Notice how I could create a rectangle there. Notice how I could also create a rectangle here, as well as, and by the way, there's more than one way of breaking these apart, as you can see. One way is not the correct way over the other here. So let's start with the first rectangle here. This rectangle here is, what was the dimension here? This was an 8, that's a 2. So 8 times 2 gives you a 16 unit squared. Okay? Base times height, basically. The next rectangle that you see, well, actually, it's actually a, I wonder if this was a, let me see here. I'm actually going to go back here and let's look at this particular rectangle first. Notice how the base is a 5, and then the height is a 3. 5 times 3 is 15. So I got 15 units squared here. Okay. Okay, and then the next rectangle here. Let's look at this shape here. It's quadrilateral. Notice how this is a 3, and I'm trying to figure out what the length of this is. Okay, we do know that the full length is an 8. This partial length is a 5, so that length must be what? It must be a 3. So it becomes 3 times 3, which makes it a 9 units squared. Okay. Finally, this rectangle here is a 3. This length here is going to be the same as this length here, which is an 8. So 8 times 3 gives you that 24 units squared. So I've got my area for the 4 individual rectangles, I need to add them up at this point. 16 plus the 9 plus the 24 plus the 15. Okay, you add them up. So 9, 18, 24, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 64 units squared. So here is my area for this composite figure here. Okay, let's move on to the third example here. At this time, what I want you to do is, you got this problem in front of you. I want you to try to do this on your own first. Find the perimeter and the area. Again, start with counting up the number of sides first. How many sides are there? Write that in. And then I want you to calculate the perimeter by looking for the missing sides. Here's a missing side here that you need to figure out what it is. And then make sure that you add up all the sides for your perimeter. And then figure out what the area is on the next page here, which I'll show you in a bit. Okay? So pause the video and try this out for yourself first. Okay, so what you should have gotten here is the number of sides being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 sides total. This length here is going to be the same as the 4 plus the 2 plus the 6. That makes it 12. That's a 12. And so your perimeter would actually be, I'm going to add them, and notice how I can see the 12 and the 8 going together. That's 20. I can see that the 6 and the 4 goes together. That's another 10 there. So that's 30, 35, 40, and 46. So my perimeter is 46. Check your work to see if you got 46 as well. 46 units. Okay, that's my perimeter. Moving on to the area. What do I do with the area? You need to break this apart into its geometric shapes. I guess what I could do is I could bring this down. Actually, that looks a little off here. Here's one. Here's another. Okay, so let me start by multiplying 8 times the 6 for this big rectangle here, and that would give me a 48. Here's a 48 unit squared. Okay, this little rectangle that you see there, what could that be? Let's take a look. That length is a 2, that base. We're looking for the height, right? What could the height be? The whole length is an 8. We're going to minus the 5 from it. That must be a 3. So that is a 3. 3 times 2 gives you a 6. So that's 6 units squared. And lastly, we've got 6 times the 4 that you see here. That gives you a 24 units squared. Okay? So that's 48 plus the 6 plus the 24. I notice that these two make it 30. And so that makes it 78 unit squared. Okay? Did you get that? Check to see if you got it. If you did not get it, rewind the video to make sure that you've got it here. You know how to do this. We've got 2 more examples here. The next example, example 4. Finding the perimeter and the area of this particular one here. This composite shape kind of looks like a staircase, doesn't it? Again, start from the basics. Count up the number of sides that this thing has. Okay? So pause the video, count up the number of sides, and I want you to try to find the perimeter and the area. Okay? Do that right now. Pause the video. Take as long as you need to. Rewind if you need to as well. Okay? All right. So welcome back. Let's count up the sides. That's 1. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's a total of 10 sides. Okay, 10 sides. What's my perimeter? Well, if that's I'm trying to look for this length here, right? If that's a 2, that's another 2, that's another 2, that's another 2. These 4 are going to make up the length of this one line here, if you can see that. Okay? I mean, so that's really 2, 4, 6, 8. This is going to be 8 centimeters. This length here on the bottom is going to be made up of This length there, that's 2, 4, 6, 8. That's also 8 centimeters. Okay? So what is my perimeter? We'll start adding them up. 8 plus 8 is 16. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. My perimeter is 32 centimeters. They gave us centimeters this time around, so we're not using units, obviously. So my perimeter equals to 32 centimeters. Okay. Moving along, we're looking for the area of this particular figure now. The area. It's the same as the other one there. What I can do is I can see that I can break it apart into rectangles. Here's one. Okay. Here is another rectangle. Here is another rectangle. Okay. So let's start. That's 2. We said that this was an 8 base times height. 8 times 2. That gives me 16 centimeters squared. Okay. This particular length must be 2 less than the 8, which makes it a 6. So this is a 6. 6 times the 2 gives you a 12. So that's 12 centimeters squared. Okay. Next one here. This length here must be 6 less than the 2, which makes it a 4. Right? So 4 times the 2 gives you an 8 centimeters squared. And lastly, this length here, it's got to be a 4 less than the 2, which makes it a 2. 2 times 2 makes it a 4 centimeters squared. Okay? So I need to add up 16 plus the 12 plus the 8 plus the 4. Add them up. I've got 10, 20, that's 20, 3, 4, 40 centimeter squared. That's my total area here. 20 centimeters squared. Okay, did you get that as your answer? If you did not, go back and try again. Okay? We come across our final problem here. It says here, Dad is planning on adding new carpeting and crown moldings for every room in your home. Calculate the amount of crown molding you'll need in inches and the amount of carpet you'll need for your room in square inches if the layout of your room is as shows below. And note that the diagram is not drawn to scale. Okay? So here's the diagram of your room, what it looks like. Crown molding. Do you know what a crown molding is? Crown molding. If you're not sure what a crown molding is, you might want to Google it right now. Crown molding. Okay? It's that little decorative piece on the ceilings that kind of looks like this. Okay? If this is your ceiling, it's kind of like, it's one of these things. And it actually is extra material, which means that it costs extra to have this installed. It looks really nice if you have crown moldings on your ceilings. So, and they do sell the material by, I suppose, in this example here, they're selling it by the feet. Oh, I made a mistake here. It's not going to be in inches, but it's actually going to be in feet, because it's in feet here. And it's square feet as well. Okay? So my mistake here. It should actually be in feet. So how do I find the perimeter? Well, how do I find the amount of crown molding that I'm going to need? I'm going to need to use perimeter to figure that out. Because I'm physically looking for the distance from here to here. That's the amount of crown molding I'm going to need for that side of the room. I'm going to need to know the distance from here to here for the crown molding that's needed for that side of the room, and so forth. So we begin the same way that we have. Let's count up the number of sides first. Okay? So can you pause the video and count up the number of sides? Okay, do that right now. Okay, so let's start. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6, 7, and 8. I counted a total of 8 sides. There's 8 here. Is there any that had no dimensions? Well, I noticed that this has no dimension. Okay? So what could that dimension be? What could that be? Let me see here. Okay. So if this is going to be a little tricky, but it can be done. We're looking for this dimension here, as I said, right? What could this dimension be? Well, let's start with this here. This whole length here is 15. This length up to here is a 5, right? That length up to here is a 5. So this length must be a 10, okay? Now if I bring this down, this length is a 10, and if this whole length is a 14, this length must be what? It must be a 4, okay? That's going to be a 4, so that's a 4. Alrighty? So, let me just kind of clean this up here. This is looking pretty messy here. So, we can start adding up the dimensions here at this point. So, let's do just that. I'm going to start with the 15 plus the 14 makes it a 29. That's 39. 39 plus 6 is a 45. 45, that makes it a 50. 54. 54. And then the 8 that we add. That's a 62. The perimeter is 62 feet, which means that that's the amount of crown molding that I'm going to need. I need 62 feet of crown molding. Okay? Next, I'm going to be multiplying and creating rectangles here. 6 times the 4 makes it 24. We did say that this, actually let's make it like this here. This rectangle here that I've highlighted in yellow, okay, that's an 8 for the height. My base is going to be a 10, if you remember. We made it into a 10. 8 times 10 is an 80 feet squared, okay? And then lastly, the last rectangle that you see, I'm going to highlight in green. And this particular one is 15 times 4 here, okay? 15 times 4. 15 times 4 is a 60, so that's a 60 feet squared. So you add up your 3 areas that you see, and you end up with 164 square feet. So the amount of carpet that we're going to need, carpet, is 164 square feet. The amount of crown molding that we're going to need is 62 feet. Okay? That's what you would give to your father as your order for your room, and he would be extremely proud if you got the figures correct, obviously. You end up writing up a bigger number, he's going to end up having to pay for more. You end up writing less, and he's going to have to go back to the store again to purchase the amount that he needs, right? So math is important, as you can see. If you have any questions, please write them down in your notes and bring them to class the next day. Alrighty. Thank you very much for listening here. Bye-bye.